Today we are going to go over setup procedures. So this is about our 40th setup this year, I think. We're in Alamosa, Colorado on a very bumpy road, so probably not the best time to film, but the reason we're filming here is we're just at the outskirts of the campground, and a lot of what we do takes place ahead of time. So one thing we try to do is if we can get an aerial shot or a space number, we try to look into it, see if there's going to be any challenges, trees, things like that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a space number for this one, so we have no idea what we're getting into. The other thing is our sway bars. We've learned that the hard way, haven't we?
Yes, make sure that one of the things we're going to look for is to see is if we're going to have any funky angles when we back in, or if we're going to be on uneven ground, because both of those make it a lot more difficult to get your sway bars off.
Yeah, so we'll take them off out in the street or other places. I think we have a pull-through site here though, so it shouldn't be too bad. When we get to the campground, we'll check in. A lot of times right now, because of COVID, there's no contact. You don't talk to anybody. They have a packet for you. I don't know if that'll be the case here or not.
It's what you're doing, making me feel like I'm falling. And when you're moving, I can hear my calling. There's no one else here that I see but you. It's what you're doing that's making me feel like I'm falling. Yeah, I'm falling in love.
All right, so we're all checked in and we got our map, which it's cool when they have these because then you don't have to go searching. This is a pretty basic campground. It's nice. It'll be easy to find. Our spot is actually right here, but it's going to be easier if we go around based on the map so that I can back in on the driver's side. It's always better to be able to back in so that you can see through your driver's side mirror. Oftentimes, in fact, at the last campground, Melissa had to back in passenger side just the way everything was angled, but it's always better to back in driver's side. So we look at the map, see what we got, look at our spaces, and now we're going to make the loop and pull into the spot. So we'll show you what it's like there. Okay, we're at our site, which is A4, and first thing I'm going to always do is check the site. Now we have no overhang, so this is going to be easy. But I do still walk it, make sure there's no nails and that there's nothing. Thought I saw something. Make sure that there's no nails, make sure there's nothing in the site. Look to see where our connections are at. And we switched spots because Melissa wanted to practice on a smaller spot like this, so our connections are up towards the front. Now the next thing I'm going to do is notify her that it's clear, and we use our phones to communicate if there's a signal. If there's no signal, then we switch to radios. We do have some radios that we brought along with us. So I give her a call. Okay, you're clear to come in? Okay. Yep, you're doing good. You're doing good. A little bit driver. Yeah, a little bit driver. Just a tad bit. Keep coming driver a little bit. Okay, now, no, you're good. You were doing good. All right, straighten it out. Just come straight back. All right, before we really get the trailer set up, we want to check water and power. So I'm gonna turn the water on just for a second to make sure we don't have any rust or any brown coming out of it. And this is crystal clear, so we're good to go there. Okay, so our power connections, we use an EMS system, we use a progressive system. It serves as both a surge protector, but also to make sure that if there's low voltage or any other electrical problems, it also checks for reverse groundings and things like that. This could be a lifesaver. Having to do repairs on your unit could be quite expensive, and you want to avoid having to do that. Okay, we're going to check and make sure that the breaker's off. I'm also going to check and make sure we don't have anything loose. Everything looks pretty good. So with the breaker off, I'm going to plug this in. we have a 30 amp unit, so we're using the 30 amp. If this was only a 20 amp, we probably wouldn't stay here. But a 50 amp, we do have a dogtail that you can connect. I'm going to turn it on, and then we're going to make sure that we have enough voltage so we're over 120. We're not too high though. And then E0 at the end there. That's something important. So
the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove our distribution hitch sway bars. A couple things to take into consideration. We're going to put some blocks down based on the height and the level that we need. We're also going to pay attention to how much we might need for our stand, because it is a removable stand, so we might need to shorten or lengthen it based on how much we're going to need to lift our unit to either get the bars off or disconnect it from the truck. All right, I've gotten the truck pretty high, close enough, I think, to my shoulder. It just kind of depends. You'll get to know your unit a little bit better based on your height and then based on, of course, the overall setup. So should slip out nice and easy like that. If it does not, play with the height to get it at the right angle to allow it to come off easier. Another thing we do is we use wood underneath. They have multiple plastic things that you can buy to use at the stores. It is lighter. We prefer the wood. It's a little more sturdy, it's a little more solid, and just our personal preference.
okay, the next thing that I want to do is I want to check that it's level. We keep any tools, with the exception of our air system for filling up the tires, just because it doesn't fit in here, but we keep most of our tools in this front compartment, so that we only really need to open one compartment on the road, so our tools and things like that are in there. I'm going to pull out my cross chocks wrench and a level, and we're going to see how level our side is. And we're actually pretty close to level, so I think we're going to be okay. Although we are going to be using a lot more propane, so maybe I'll have her leveled a little bit just to show you how it's done. The first things is we went with a Camco leveling kit because our wheelbase between the two axle is relatively small. Anderson also makes one that is highly recommended by a lot of people. We've never used it. And then the X-Chocks, you'll see how I apply those. Those are used for both stabilizing the vehicle, the trailer. So when you're in it, you're not bouncing around like you're on a ship. It actually helps that quite a bit, and also serves as a secondary chock to keep the trailer from moving when we unlatch it from the vehicle. Now I had her move forward a little bit. We've gotten it level. Now I'm going to chock the back so that it doesn't slide backwards. And I'm going to put the passenger side X-Chock in. Okay, we've got chocks on the front and on the rear and our X-Chock, and now we're going to confirm the level. And I'm going to notify her that it's okay to let go of the brake and see if the vehicle shifts. Okay, go ahead and let off the brake. And you're good. Go ahead and get out.
After you've removed your sway bars, you're going to remove your trailer from your hitch and from your truck. So first thing we're going to do is remove our lock. We're going to release it, and you may have to raise it or lower it a little bit more after you take off your bars, just depending on your setup. Now that we've disconnected the trailer from the hitch, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the chains. We're going to remove the emergency trailer brake, and then we're going to DC the power. Sometimes we're a lot closer than this. Ours actually will not allow us to put the tailgate down this close to our trailer. But before we move it forward, we want to make sure we have all of this disconnected.
Now, once the truck's pulled out of the area, we have enough room to put the tailgate down and get around. We're going to secure our hitch. We use two different locks. We use one here, and then of course we place this one inside. You know, if somebody really wants to get to it, they're going to, but this definitely will keep the honest people honest. The other thing you'll notice is we've put glow-in-the-dark tape here, so that way at night when you're backing up, your camera can pick up on it. It looks like I need to replace the top piece, but this has proved to be very effective, and we'll show the other areas that we've placed this tape, and that way you can see how we utilize it, and we actually will have this available for sale in the very near future. The other place that we've applied this tape is to our steps. Now, it's slip resistant, which helps you with traction, but also if you look at how bright it glows at night, it allows us to move around at night and go into our unit without having to turn on our lights, which really kind of may impact the ambiance or shine into our neighbor's trailer.
Our next step is going to be to make sure our rig is level front to back now that we've done the leveling side to side. Some people will do it based on certain parameters. You want to make sure it's done level because it is going to potentially impact your refrigerator. So the way we choose to do it is we use the area right here. This allows us to keep this shut. We were doing it on our fridge, but depending on which level in our fridge we looked at or used, it was off and it was different. So we found that this seems to be pretty good. Another way people will use, they'll put a can on the floor and they'll do it on the floor, but not necessarily everything is going to be even in level. So Angel's going to be at the front. He's going to be monitoring it. I'm going to stay here. One of the benefits of doing it this way is it does allow us to keep our screen shut so bugs aren't getting in. But I'm going to stay here and I'll let him know when we are level right in between the lines. After we've leveled our unit, not before, we're going to check our stairs. Now, our stairs, while solid and seemed wonderful when we picked this unit out, have been quite problematic. For one, this has to be fully out, and we actually have to use a bungee to leave it all the way in because it is damaging both our door and our steps. So to be able to test it, what we have to do is check to see if our screen is going to close, because oftentimes it will not close all the way. And since we have our stuff all the way down to the bottom rung, we may have to take them out completely. Because of the way this is sitting, I'm going to try removing this one because this one still seems to have some flex, even though this side's already hitting. And that's going to be what it is for this trip. So not the best fit depending on where we are and if we have enough room. This is something that we will occasionally check earlier if we have enough room to adjust our unit. Or depending on the location, if it's gravel here, we can dig the gravel out or we can make minor adjustments. But as far as this location is, we're already off to the side as far as we can be. So to try to get this to close, what we did is we actually lifted the front end up just a little bit. We still have the bubble within those center lines, but it has helped it just enough so that we can get closer to shutting it. We have to shut it forcefully. It is what it is, but hopefully it'll do as minimal damage as possible.
I misspoke. We actually do electrical before we even drop the stabilizers, especially in the summer because I want to get that refrigerator on as soon as possible. In this case, what we're going to use is just our standard 25-foot cord. We got plenty of room for that. Now, little trick we used is all of these reusable grocery bags. We started putting equipment in it because it holds it very well. And we also keep everything on the side that it's going to be used on. So on the driver's side, we obviously have our electrical and things that are going to be used on the side. So we keep in a compartment right there. I'm going to check to make sure my prongs didn't get bent. I'm going to check both ends, make sure I don't have any debris or dirt. Then I'm going to plug it in. Before I do that, I'm going to shut the power off again. I'm gonna make the connection and make sure it's very secure. Now I'm going to check my prongs again, make sure I don't have any spiders that grew in there while we were traveling, especially if it's your first time taking it out for the year or it's been a while. Who knows, you may have a wasp nest in there. Check to make sure that's clean. Place it in, turn it to lock it in place, and then you always want to make sure that you completely lock it. Worst thing that could happen in the middle of the night is somebody comes sneaking through your campground, trips on it, pulls it out, and then you're without power. Now, what I'll do is I can tell Melissa that before that, I'm gonna go turn the power on. It takes about a minute to a minute and a half for our EMS to actually cycle through and allow power to come through. Once that's good to go, we'll have her turn the breakers on the inside. Our next step is going to be to put the stabilizers down. I'm going to put all 4 stabilizers down. The manufacturer actually recommended that the stabilizers are down before we do the slide out, and so that makes it the next thing we're going to do. I'm going to use a drill because it's a lot easier than the hand crank, and we've actually preset it so that it'll only put so much torque before it stops. We do put wood down. We're pretty low in the front here, so we probably could get away with not using the block, but I still like having the block down to protect the bottom of the stabilizer, and also it really kind of makes sure that it's a little more flush, because in a gravel like this, it's kind of, you know, up and down, so this should help a little bit. Now you want to make sure that the stabilizer has full contact with the block, and I'm only going to go maybe a quarter turn after the contact. On the driver's side, I'm not going to go anything past contact, because when we put the slide out, the weight in the trailer is actually going to shift to that side, and in most cases I'm actually going to have to readjust the stabilizers on the passenger side. You don't want too much weight. These are not designed to lift up the trailer. They're strictly there to keep you from rocking like you're on a boat while you're inside. So I'm going to do all 4 of those, and then we'll show you how we do the slide out. Before I'm going to give the go-ahead for Melissa to put the slide out, I'm going to hook up the sewage. It's just much easier to access the discharge point. And before I touch any of this nasty stuff, I'm going to put on some gloves. I also place all of the sewage related items into a red bucket, a very strong visual management to make sure I'm not getting anything out of there without gloves on. I do keep the bucket wiped down on the outside so that I can grab it and move it around, especially at night, or if I just want to grab my fishing poles where I keep it in the back. I don't want to have to put gloves on every time, but anything inside of that bucket is what I consider nasty, and I'm not going to touch it. We keep our sewer hose in the actual bumper. I don't really like that. When I get back home, we're going to build a compartment to put it into. Over time, that's going to rust. So it is what it is right now, though. We did replace the end caps because we were losing these. So Squeeze Easy by Camco, these have not, we don't even have to adjust them. Usually at every gas station, we have to pop them back in. The other thing is they have plenty of holes in them to allow air circulation to help dry that. Now, I got sick and tired of reaching my hand in there. That's nasty. So I actually tied some yarn that I got off of a firewood bundle, and it helps me pull it out. As you can see, that one was kind of stuck. I'm going to make my connections, and then we're going to go and put it in place. Now for the connections, I don't even have a free hand, so I'm going to place this down. We actually use clear angles, but we use 2 clear angles. In the beginning, we only used 1, but then I couldn't tell what was stuck in the hose, especially if you had, you know, some kind of a P-trap put in place or something. That could be a problem. So I'm going to use 2 clear angles so I can see what's coming out of it and also what's going into the ground. Now, I did not connect this angle because this actual outlet is threaded, so I want to use a threading instead of having to put a piece of wood or something on top of it. So I'm going to put this in place, turn it once or twice, then I'm going to make my connection. Now I actually threaded it on the wrong one. So that tells me I have an improvement I can make. I can mark so that these go together. Once I have that threaded, and the reason you want to thread it is so it doesn't pop out once you pull your black tank. That could be a problem. I'm going to make sure that both valves are closed, and then I'm going to open slowly just in case the valve stopped working. All right, I'm good to go. Now I want to make sure that all points of contact, all 4 points of contact are made. Now I have both points of contact, my valves are closed. I am going to keep my valves closed. Some people will say that they open up the gray tank so they can shower and not worry about it. We can get 4 or 6 showers, both of us, without having to drain our gray tank. I want to keep my gray tank full. First off, I don't want to have it open so that sewer fumes have the potential to get in my trailer. The other thing is, after I'm done flushing my black tank, my hose is going to be filled with contamination. This isn't going to solve all of that, but if I wait and use my gray tank, I can flush out the hose actually to the point where soapy water is just flushing through it, and it'll remove a lot of the contaminants. But other than that, I'm done. I'm not going to have to touch this. We're only here for 2 days. We're not going to have to touch this again until we're getting ready to leave. We've got the sewer hose all hooked up, but that doesn't mean that we're done. The last lesson is how to remove your gloves. It seems really, really simple, but I watch people almost at every campground that are wearing gloves. A lot of people don't even wear gloves, but the ones I see wearing gloves, I see them taking the gloves off incorrectly. So there's a technique that you learn, especially if you're in the hospital field or EMS, first responder, how to take gloves off so that any chemical or any type of contaminant doesn't get on your skin. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to actually pinch the middle of one glove and then pull it off. That's a little warm, so they're a little sweaty, a little harder to get off. But then I ball up that glove inside of my other glove. I want to take my clean hand and I want to place it on the inside. You don't want to try to avoid touching the outside. And I'm just going to pull it over. And essentially now what I've done is I've taken all the contaminants and I've placed them inside of a little baggie. This is clean on the inside. I'm going to go and throw this away right away. And I'm probably going to go ahead and wash my hands or at least sanitize them before I start touching other things. But this is really important and a lot of people don't pay attention to this.
Once I get the go-ahead from Angel that the power is good to go, I'm going to come in and I am going to flip on our breaker. After I flip on the breaker, my first course of action is going to be to get the fridge on so we can get that cooling back down. Once I do that, then I'm going to prepare to pull out the slide. First step in that process is to look around for anything that has moved. Depending on the travel or what kind of speed demon you are, things may shift around when you're moving down the road. One of the best things that happened to us was I accidentally forgot to put this away one time where I had been keeping it for travel and left it out here. And luckily it served as the perfect tool to move some stuff on the sides of my slide because things had actually shifted from the bedroom and came all the way forward. So I was able to put this in the small space, push it out of the way so it wouldn't block our slide as the slide goes out or catch on anything. So not only can items move, but drawers or cabinets can shift or come open. Luckily, we haven't had that happen. So after I've checked for that, I'm gonna take our slide lock out. We actually have a little warning sticker that we put here just so we don't forget. We also used to put away our step after we would install the slide, but we realized then we'd have to walk back around. So one of the things that we've done as we've done so many setups is we try to keep things where they're needed. So there was no reason for me to put the step away when I was just gonna come to the next place and need to get it out of the cabinet and use it again. So we found that we can secure it underneath our table where we keep some of our other items. Okay, so this is our system again. I'm gonna remove it now that I've taken the slide out, but we actually have it so it blocks the button, so you can't even hit the button without making sure you've taken the slide out first, or the slide lock out first. I am gonna wait for the all clear for Angel. I do wanna make sure he's over there when I'm going to pull out the slide. Although we usually try to strategically place our unit and make sure it's not going to hit anything, sometimes we could be quite close. Plus, you never know if your neighbors come out, there's kids running around or something, and you want to make sure you're not going to hit anybody.
Now that I have my sewer connection, Melissa's ready on the inside to pop out the slide out. We open up a window so that we can communicate, and sometimes we'll even use radios if there's a lot of road noise. It's pretty quiet here, so we should be good. I'm going to make sure that as she's popping it out, we're not going to hit this electrical pedestal. I'm pretty confident we aren't. And just look for other things. It's important that somebody is on the inside and that somebody else is on the outside. If you're camping by yourself, you don't have the option. I at least would walk around and make sure everything's clear right before you start extending it. But we have two people. There's no point in not having both people in place. So I'm going to give her the go ahead, and she's going to pop it out. Okay, go ahead. Now, while it's popping out, I'm going to look for things like damage. I'm going to look at the awning that goes over it, which is quite dirty. I'm going to make sure that the seal around it pops out effectively, and just keep an eye to make sure nothing hits. And make sure it's not making too many weird noises. It traditionally makes some noise anyway. And we're good to go. Now, I mentioned earlier as we put the stabilizers out that I may have to readjust this. I have a very scientific way of checking. I reach down and I kick, and if it doesn't move, this one actually moved a little bit, so I'm just going to make a minor adjustment. And that's it. I'll check this front and the back, and then we're good to go for the most part with the stabilizers and the slide out. Now, while I'm putting down the stabilizers, I will check to make sure there's no damage underneath, and mainly those propane lines. I want to make sure that I don't have any severed lines, and they look like they're in good condition. Once I've done that, we're going to make sure all the burners are turned off, and then we're going to turn on the gas. Now, our unit has two tanks with a self-pressurizing valve in the middle, but you have the option of turning it to one tank or the other, and that's how we run it. Very similar to a lean Kanban system, where when one is out, we have a backup, but then we know it's time to go get the other one filled. That's how we prefer to use that. So in this case, we have it set so that it's only gonna use one of the tanks, and I'm gonna turn it on. And you wanna make sure that you open it all the way. Once it's open all the way, Melissa's going to turn on a burner, make sure we don't have any issues with the line, and that we get good gas flow. You want to make sure with propane that or with any gas actually, that you always have a nice blue flame. You don't want an orange flame, you don't want a yellow flame. Blue is an indicator that you have good airflow or that good gas flow, and if you don't, then what you want to do is check and see what the issue is with either your lines. It could just be the matter of the burner itself, which we've shown in a different video, comes off. Once that's taken care of, you're good to go. Now, the next thing we do, and really the last thing I'm going to do on the outside, is I'm going to hook up our water. I keep my appliances in a bag. I do keep it open so it'll dry out. It didn't dry out very well today, but I keep it in a bag so it's separated from everything else. And then we always use a filter. We actually don't drink the water. I guess we would if we had to, but we tend not to. Either way, I want to use a filter so that I'm not showering in contaminated water. It won't filter out everything, but it filters out quite a bit. I'm going to place this angle into my connection, and the reason for that is I don't want to have a strain coming out. These are plastic, and you don't want to have a whole lot of weight and pressure on it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to make sure I have a washer. So I checked on the inside, I've checked this extension. That one had it before, so we should be good there. And I'm going to make the connection. Now, I used to place the filter closer to the spigot, but we've been traveling for a long time, and that hose has not really been fully decontaminated in quite a while. So now I'm going to take my hose out, make the connection here, and show you how I do that. Now, this is the 0G hose. I like it because it's very lightweight, and that's 50 feet, pretty compact. They claimed it is kink-free. I haven't found that to be the case. In fact, I think it's just because they don't charge you for the kinks, but you definitely get a bunch of them. And then of course I create some of my own as I'm hooking it up. Now what I do in this case is I'm going to actually extend this hose all the way out and then pull it underneath my trailer and then to the spigot. Now there's two appliances that I always carry with us. One is a pressure reducer and the other is a gated Y, so that way I can connect a secondary hose and also shut off my hose, either hose, instead of having to turn off all the water. Now the pressure regulator will keep it between 40 and 50 psi. We're actually at a park here that has very high psi. They have warning signs telling you that. Not always the case. The last park we were at, I probably should have taken this off because they had hardly any water pressure, but I'm still going to apply this all the time. Same thing, I'm going to check for washers, make sure I have washers everywhere. I'm going to run a little bit of water out. Make sure it's still clear, I don't have a lot of rust or anything coming. Shut down that side and slowly turn on the water. You do not want to do what's called a water hammer to your unit. You're still talking plastic pipes, they can break. So once I get it when it's fully charged, then I'm going to open it up and I'm going to go to the back and show you what I do with my hose. All right, now that my line is charged or filled with water so that it's fully pressurized, I actually take the hose underneath the trailer and then whatever excess I have, I'm just going to wind right underneath it. And that serves two purposes. One is it keeps people from tripping on it. The other thing is it keeps it out of the element. So if it's raining, I really don't want to have to deal with a muddy hose if I don't have to. So this keeps it out of the way. There's going to be a little bit exposed, but that's it. And once I'm done with that, there's only one last step on the outside.
So the last thing we're going to do before we can relax is going to be checking some of our cabinets. Oftentimes there's shifts, so when I open these, that's actually one of the best it's been. Typically you're going to be careful anytime you're opening your cabinets after you come in because things often shift. After that, we're going to kind of put everything back in place. We have buckets that we use or different things that we've found have been effective, so that way we don't have to try to find cabinet space for some of our things that maintain on the countertops, but of course aren't going to stay there when you travel. The best part about this container is it's actually collapsible as well, so it'll collapse down and go easily into another storage compartment, and it also doubles great as a laundry bag.
All right, well, that's pretty much it, right? Now we're going to go through, double check things, make sure everything's in the right place, put our table up, and have a cool refreshment.
Now, the one thing we did is we showed this to you as a step-by-step process, one after the other, but a lot of this is done congruently at the same time. Angel will be working on a lot of the stuff on the outside, while I'll be doing some of the stuff on the inside. Now, we do have those checks and those stop points where we coordinate and communicate with one another. I think communication is probably the biggest key into making sure you don't forget something, that you're not going to damage anything, and that you get everything set up right.
Absolutely. And you know, typically we can get set up in about 30 minutes. It took us about 2 hours to film this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give us a like. If you're new to the RVing world or to travel trailers specifically, please feel free to send us a message or leave a comment on this video. If you enjoyed the video or you want to follow along in our adventures, hit the subscribe button and that little bell, and it'll notify you when we release our next video. And we appreciate you watching. Hope it was helpful, and keep your adventure alive.
We forgot the propane.